And we are live now. So, tonight on Fortean Words, we have a guest. We have
Our
our
first
first
guest.
guest. Yes. We have Casondra Starfire, if you want to introduce yourself, Casondra.
Hi everybody. I'm really honored to be on with you guys. I appreciate you finding me on YouTube. I've been an orgone engineer since 2012. Um, I make orgone. That's kind of, I think, what started everything for me. I'm a truth seeker and a seeker of knowledge. I'm an occultist. I'm a targeted individual. Um, and yeah, I think that mostly sums me up, except for I write books. I have books on Amazon and Lulu. So yeah.
Yeah, we've put your YouTube channel in the show notes. So yeah, if anyone wants to follow it up, yeah. Uh, when did you first realise that the world sort of isn't what it seems? Kind of.
Oh, okay. I'd say, well, I can't start that without saying that my husband and I have been together since high school. So this journey that kind of led me to all of this information started for me, and started for us actually. We kind of took this whole journey together. And so I'd say it started for us probably around 2008, 2009. Um, I think 2008 we were kind of we found out about things like backwards speech and reversing speech to find the hidden messages in it. And we were doing things at that time like reversing Barack Obama's speech. And, there was this whole thing at the time where if you reversed one of his songs that he was using for his election, it said something like, thank you, Satan, in it
Yeah,
and
I
stuff like
heard
that.
that. I heard that one. Yeah,
Right.
We mentioned
Okay.
this last week. So yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
it's really apt.
It's just there. It's
Yeah.
there, isn't it? It's very clear, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And then there's like another reference to maritime admiralty law in that same exact one, where in the backwards speech, he says something like, we're all little ships at sea. And so there was that. And then I think it was like about a year later, we started watching things like Zeitgeist and obviously finding. I think that we, ever since high school, had kind of been interested in 9/11 being an inside job and stuff like that. But I think that around that time, we started seeing more coming out about 9/11 being an inside job, and then kind of putting it all together. And those things led us those things led us down a whole rabbit hole. And we found like all of the Phil Schneider interviews. And yeah, so I remember like around 2009 we were watching like Phil Schneider together and learning about deep underground military bases and um, all of that. And so that kind of led us into learning about different types of aliens and ETs and extra dimensional entities, um, all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, around the same time, we were having like all this very strange stuff happening to us. Um, I had graduated high school in 2007. And then, so immediately, some of the stuff that started happening to us, because my husband and I have been together since 2005. 2005, and then we graduated in 2007. Well, right after we got out of high school, we started having like what you would call gang stalking or targeted individual phenomenon happening, where we would get followed around by um, cars and vans particularly. They would follow us for miles. Like even when we were out here in the country, they would follow us for miles down back roads, and we would make like turns and loops that didn't make any sense, and the cars would still follow us. And we would get followed for miles. And so that was like actually the very first, like gang stalking and targeted individual phenomenon that we had at that time. And that was like 2008. So all of that stuff kind of happening, I suppose, led us in the direction of, searching deeper for all of this information. And then of course, like we kept pursuing information and one thing led to another. And I mean, here we are today.
So, Herbie, your keyboard's a bit loud. God.
Hold on. I'll mute myself for a sec.
Yeah, it's like uh, I found see with me, I don't know whether I was targeted individual. I was targeted as a targeted individual, or whether because it's like, are they doing it to freak us out? Because they don't seem to be doing it to make us stop, do they? I'm not sure why. Why are they doing it? Because
I think that depends. I think that depends on the priority of the target, the people doing it. And I mean, for me at least, they really were successful in shutting down everything that I had done for the last year. These vlogs that I'm doing on YouTube, where every night I live stream and I do targeted individual vlogs on my live stream, that's kind of a new thing for me. I've only been doing it for about a month or so. And so before that, they had really successfully shut down everything I was doing, because when this all started, there wasn't Voice to Skull like 24/7. It was, originally called like channel work. And I think people in the spiritual community are really familiar with channel work, but it started getting incremental where these channels took over my head. And so it was like, after a while, I couldn't get this stuff out of my head. It turned into 24/7 Voice to Skull. And because of that, it made it incredibly difficult for me to think. It still does. It makes it hard for me to think. It ended up leading into a whole bunch of other things that I didn't really, I suppose I didn't realize, even though I had read Fritz Springmeier's book on how to create a total Illuminati mind control slave, which the people doing this to me, they are using that book in their program to program me and program other people. I didn't realize like the depth of what they were doing. And so for me, it ended up a very deep level of MK Ultra and mind control programming. And yeah, so
yeah,
I suppose I didn't realize, but I think that every single person is maybe a different level threat target. And then it has to do with, the people that are targeting you. And I think for me, it was incremental because they crept into my life a little bit more at a time, where it wasn't like they were constantly on when this started happening to me, but now it's like everyone is in my head 24/7. There's like a group of maybe less than 20 of these people, and it doesn't matter what time of day or night it is. I'm permanently hooked up to their channels, and they're trying to manage my life 24 hours a day, down to the dreams that I have. And I suppose a lot of people have been talking about that lately, especially Vulcan Wolverine and other people have been coming out and saying, this is very common for us. We can't get away from this. We can't get this out of our head. It comes to be known as Voice to Skull, but it's really these people's channels.
The
And
voice.
so,
Oh, sorry, Cassandra.
oh, go ahead.
The voice to skull. Is it paranormal? You think, or do you think it's scientific?
Um, it's very, I would say it's very scientific, because it's these people doing it. But what I will say is that when this started for me, when this started, I was led to believe that it was spirits and demons and aliens. And one of the reasons that they wipe our mind and wipe our memories, and this is part of like the brainwashing and how they continue doing this to targets over time, is that every time they change up their programming, let's say you stop believing that it's aliens. Well, they begin wiping your memories of their program that has to do with them making you believe it's aliens. And then they start making you believe that it's spirits, because they will more or less go from one thing or to the other. They'll try to make you believe it's aliens for a while, try to make you believe that it's spirits for a while, or demons for a while. Now, luckily for me, I've always taken really good journal notes. I've had journals for the last like 15 years. So for me, they are not able to completely wipe my memories, because I have detailed journals of all of the things that I experienced. But so it's, I think, part of the psyop aspect of this, where so many people believe that they're dealing with demons and believe that they're dealing with spirits, or believe that they're dealing with, spiritual phenomenon in general, between aliens, demons, angels, all of that. And so I'm not saying that aliens aren't real, and I'm not saying that spirits and demons aren't real, but I am saying that these people masquerade as this phenomenon. They masquerade as angels and demons and spirits.
So, do you believe
So
in the was it? It's called the unified. theory of the paranormal then, that maybe because like if you go through time, demons became fairies, which then became aliens, didn't they? It could all in fact be the same phenomena, just
Yep,
pretending to be different
absolutely.
things.
Absolutely. And I think that a little bit of that has to do with the fact that over time, as religions conquered different parts of the world, those religions kind of worked those things into, their text. And then at the same time, we also have different mythologies, different like folk legends and stuff like that that pass down. So if we think about it, it might be that either before humanity was engineered or evolved, whichever you believe, or before humanity has been extinct a couple times, because I'm kind of the mindset that humanity has probably wiped itself out a couple of times and we keep starting over or being re-engineered. And so I think that what it comes down to is those creatures, say fairies, which might be aliens, or little demons or whatever, I think that it comes down to they might have been here first. And I think that kind of depends. And so yes, I think that over time, our understanding of them evolved with, our with mythology and religion evolving as well, so that those things kind of got worked into the texts that are passed down and our understanding of it.
Yeah, it's like, when skeptics say oh, this stuff doesn't exist, I answer them with well, these programs and these secret groups, they must exist, because otherwise the military or whoever are running things are not doing their job properly. Like, they have to find out what's going on. I mean, that's the whole point of intelligence agencies, isn't it? And they need the edge. They want this edge over their enemies, so they must be doing stuff.
Yes. And I think that one of the other aspects of that is, I'm not just going to mention negative-blooded people, because negative-blooded people seem to have a really high target rate. But what I will say is that myself and many of the other people who like to live stream with me every night and join in on my channel and join in on my chat, we often have discussions where, we will talk about the very paranormal, very extra-dimensional experiences that we've had, experiences being contactees, experiences with aliens, experiences with spirits and demons, and they stem from before we were targeted. So to me, it almost seems like the government or whoever is running these programs, they are covering up or trying to discredit actual contactees or actual abductees, because it seems like a whole bunch of us had experiences with aliens and experiences with all of these other things before we ended up in these direct targeting programs.
I can resonate with that. Yeah, if I can just say, I had alien abduction experiences as a child, like before any of this sort of targeted individual stuff happened with me. And I think that's very true.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like to an extent they're almost using it to discredit us, because one of the things that they were doing to me in this program was they were trying to make me see, they have showed me all of the different ways that they fake phenomenon. They've showed me all of the stuff that they can do with blue beam style, holographic style technology. And so they've showed me how they can fake all of these different things, and how they did pull it over on me that made me think that I was dealing with aliens and demons and spirits in the last couple years. I've only been dealing with this program of these people doing it for the last 3 years. But before that, for all my life, I had really paranormal experiences. And so in the last 3 years, one of the things they did was, try to convince me. They tried to convince me that everything I had experienced in my life was fake phenomenon. And in that, they tried to kind of brainwash me. They wanted me to not believe that the things that happened to me really happened to me. They wanted me to believe that it was just people in this program over time fucking with me.
Yeah.
Or messing with me. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Yeah, it's fine. Because when I had my alien abduction experiences, I felt that they'd somehow changed part of my. I know it sounds crazy, or maybe not to us, but to the general listener. I've really felt that they'd changed my brain. So they changed part of my brain, and ever since I had these experiences when I was about 4, I started getting into the paranormal. So I suspect that the key to all this stuff that's going on is alien abduction. I think that is what they're mainly interested in.
Yes, and I don't want to say that I have like a political agenda in this, but one thing I will say that's really interestingly related to that is the targeting for me. For some reason, 2017, when Donald Trump came into office, that is when all of this targeting started for me. And for some reason, it's almost like when he went into office, this voice to skull, these channels really started attacking me and taking over my life. And I definitely lost my train of thought. What did you just say? Can you rephrase
Well,
that?
I think alien abduction is the key to all this, because I'm
Oh,
a big fan of Joe Mantaldo of ICAR, and he's been investigating all this for years. And he says like the only time he was hassled, like with actual people showing up in like FBI type suits, like flashing their guns like under their jackets, was when he started talking about alien abduction. And
right.
he claims they told him, like, they said like you can talk about like lights in the sky and things like that, but stay away from alien abduction. And so I think that's the key to all this stuff, like, because I mean this world is
Yes.
a pyramid scheme, isn't it? It's like a pyramid scheme, and the higher it goes, the weirder it gets. And you know what's at the top of this
Yes.
pyramid is, I think, it's got to be a non-human alien or whatever it is. This thing.
Okay, so yes, I think that's where I was going to go with that. How when all of this started for me, or I should say, when this directed targeting started for me, it was when Donald Trump took office, and so before that happened, I was very involved in activating my DNA, and like you said, I think that some of our contactee, alien abduction, alien contact stories and experiences, I do think that it changes our brain. It changes maybe our DNA depending on, what happens to you. And so doing up until that point, all of these things trying to activate my DNA. I had been doing energy work. I almost no longer saw myself as human anymore. I very much saw myself as more of an activated starseed. And so I was doing things like trying to activate all 12 strands of my DNA, doing so much energy work. And so I almost feel like with this directed targeting, they were trying to shut down what I was doing to myself.
Mm.
Well,
They
Donald
they
Trump.
have repeatedly told me that they wanted to rehumanize me.
Well, Donald Trump becoming president was quite
Go
significant
ahead.
because that was when the lunatics took over the asylum, wasn't it? That was when
Yes.
that was when they gave off any pretense that the president ran the country, didn't they?
Yes, absolutely. And he was definitely a selected president between the details of him being born like 70 days before the founding of Israel, 70 or and then on a blood moon that day. And then, obviously all of his ties to Israel and um, shoot, I keep losing my train of thought. But basically, just comes down to him being a selected president, him proclaiming himself king of Israel. There was clearly a very political agenda and a very biblical agenda with him becoming president. And so I'm really hoping to see him impeached because this did not happen to me before he took office. And almost immediately, like after he took office, I started being directly targeted by all of these channels that slowly took over my brain and my life. But yeah, and I think that a lot of it is I I was like you said, all of these things with alien contacteeism and everything I was doing to myself, my whole like soul's journey and everything that I was studying was turning me into something else, and I feel like it was a threat to them.
I do resonate with what you're saying with the DNA, because I was like although I was abducted by aliens and that, I was a relatively normal person. But as soon as I went through puberty, that was almost like the DNA just flicked a switch. And I almost overnight, I just became very serious and like very seriously into the paranormal and conspiracies, like as if like my DNA had just flicked a switch. And maybe that's
Yes,
connected. Like,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that, I mean, I'm not just going to say that negative blooded people have Anunnaki DNA because that's a whole conspiracy theory. I think that Anunnaki DNA, negative blooded people, the negative blooded traits are recessive in positive blooded people because of how long we've been interbreeding on the planet.
Oh,
So it's
sorry,
not just like negative.
I don't understand the whole negative blooded people thing. Can you explain it to me?
Oh,
Are,
sure.
are you negative? O negative.
I have no idea
I'm
what my
A
blood.
negative.
I don't know what
I'm
mine
not.
is.
No,
Oh, so you mean
I'm not.
actual
You might
negative?
be.
So if you're something negative blood.
Right, I'm A negative blood, and it kind of leads back into the entire topic of Anunnaki, those who from heaven to earth came. Some people associate it with the Watchers from the Bible who interbred with women to create, hybridized people. And so this would come back to the fallen angel bloodline or the Anunnaki bloodline, depending on if you're looking at this from a biblical or a Sumerian context. And so the whole idea behind it is that this negative bloodline would be, in the entire human species, but most pronounced within the negative blood type people. And so you might be really interested to find out what kind of blood type you are, because it just so happens that most of the people I meet who are targeted individuals, they are negative blooded. They have negative blood. And we have talked extensively, especially on my channel, about how negative blooded people end up with all of these amazing like natural gifts, the ability to do energy work or psi abilities, stuff that makes us kind of supermen and x-men and stuff like that. And so it's kind of more like a statistic, but I think that's why most of the people that contact me, they are negative blooded and they want to bond with other targeted individuals, because before we were targeted, most of us were very interested in developing our psi abilities, all that kind of stuff. And when these people take over being in your head and take over your life, you're no longer able to work on yourself. You're no longer able to, focus on energy work or focus on meditation or focus on developing your natural abilities. And, so I would say that they're God-given abilities. But these people, when they slowly took over my life, they shut down my ability to really meditate. They shut down my ability to do energy work. Now, I'm actually a certified Reiki practitioner. I love, love, love doing Reiki. And so for me, that's very frustrating, because with all of the things that they've done to me, I can't focus to do Reiki. I can't pull chi anymore because of how what I am in, especially if we talk in terms of MK Ultra programming and what they're doing to me. I've been in something called Diana's Dollhouse for the last like year and a half, and Diana's Dollhouse is marionette programming and marionette puppeting. They attach all of these like strings and remotes to me so that they can manipulate my body and control my movements as well as my mind. So it's like taking over my entire body. Now, I hadn't quite put it together up until recently, when a couple of my subscribers told me to revisit Fritz Springmeier's work. And I suddenly realized that by Diana's Dollhouse, Diana calls me her Barbie doll, her only doll. I didn't realize that she was using marionette programming on me. And, so this is actually how they do the MK Ultra marionette programming. They use this type of targeted technology, and they cover you in remotes and cables and their technology that they're using to do this. And in that way, they can create a doll out of a person, and they can manipulate their mind. They can manipulate their body, basically take full control over you. And so that's kind of what ended up happening to me. And that's kind of where I am now, trying to get out of it.
Yeah, I've read a lot of Sprigmeyer stuff. Yeah, it's very scary stuff, isn't it? It's like,
It absolutely is. And it was really scary to see myself in it, because I mean, I had survived being sexually abused when I was a teenager, and I had got through that. Like, it wasn't a problem to me anymore. But I had seen, when I originally read Fritz Springmeier's book, I was identifying the programming that happened to me, because my sexual abuse happened when I was 13. There was a whole like satanic aspect of what happened to me when I was growing up, and my sexual abuse and all of that. Well, I had been working through that and kind of like deprogramming myself, healing myself. And then 2017 happens, Donald Trump takes office, and all of a sudden, these people take over my life and start using all of that programming on me again. And not just me, but my kids also. So that was the really scary part, was at some point I had to realize it wasn't just happening to me. They were manipulating my family as well. And I think that's the scariest part, is me trying to get out of it to, save what's left of my family and, save my kids' futures. Because when they're doing this to me, they're not just ruining my life, they're also ruining my kids' futures by being involved in my family, managing and handling my family 24/7. And that doesn't leave us any free will or any freedom.
Yeah, it's like these people who, like the people who do my labs and things like that, it's almost as like they don't seem to fear the police or the alphabet agencies, and it's almost like they don't even seem to fear the aliens, like as if they've got some kind of weapon against them or something. And they seem to be operating like completely freely and doing just about whatever they want, don't they? It's like it's just insane. But I'm wondering whether all this targeted individual stuff, are they sort of trying to put us through trauma, and their goal is maybe to recruit us, maybe whether they put us through all this trauma and then one day they'll approach us and say like, well, this all can be stopped if you come and work with us, kind of thing. Sort of.
Yes, that is absolutely what they have been putting me through, but it won't work. They learn every single day with me that I would rather be tortured and have to deal with this than cooperate with them. And they have tried. See, when they do it to me, I am a parent myself. So I see it more like they're using parenting tactics on me, where they're like, okay, if you do this, you're going to be rewarded. But if you don't cooperate, you're going to be punished. And for me, I see it as them trying to be like a parent in my life when I don't need one, because I'm 30 years old. I have 2 kids. I am an adult. I parent my own children, and those tactics won't work on me. But they are using trauma-based mind control to do those things, because, there's the whole reward aspect of if you cooperate and if you become them. And then there's the punishment and, trauma if you don't. And so one of the things is they have tried to use sexual trauma on me for the last couple of years. And so that has been the biggest thing for me, is them using different types of sexual trauma on me. Hang on one second. Hi, Peter.
When I get home,
because I know for a fact that they tried to recruit me, because back in the 1990s I was sniffing around Mensa, that supposedly high IQ thing, and I was interested in that because in Mensa, or back in them days, in Mensa there's like different sections of it.
Yes, so they actually use this remote technology. It's a remote type technology for directed targeting. I'm on Fortean Words Radio Show. So some
before you go on, Casondra, I was just going to say, do you think maybe they're still in the data gathering stage where they they haven't worked out what works and what doesn't, so they're still in the kind of throwing as much shit against the wall as they can and seeing what sticks? Do you think that could be a possibility?
For me right now, not really, because these people who have been doing this to me, they have been consistently doing this to me and tracking me and studying me for 3 years. I'm going on my 3rd year with these same people doing it. So at this point, they know every single way that I will react to something. They've mapped out my brain and how I think. They know what to expect from me. And so that's how they kind of change up their program, and they reprogram different triggers for me to try to kind of, it's kind of like behavioral prediction, but when they reprogram and program different triggers in my brain, it's kind of to put my brain on a loop so that as I'm thinking, it'll jump me to different triggers to try to control my thought. And in that, they're kind of able to control my behavior along with the different, like I said, the remote type technology they're using now. The other targeted individuals that have been joining me, we've been talking about how they've been able to do like the marionette puppeting, the marionette programming with their remote technology, because they have cables and remotes that they attach onto my body, and I live with them on my body like 24 hours a day. They never take me off of the cables. And so what it comes down to is they're using these different types of remote technology to constantly track a target, which also leads into the body mapping technology, where some of my subscribers and I have been talking about their method of tracking their target. It's not just EMF based. They also use this body mapping technology where they can target and torture very precise locations on and in the body, and that has to do with their body mapping software.
I've got
So
2 questions for you, Cassandra. So you say these people, do you know who they are? And you say about the stuff that's attached to you. Can you not get to it to pull it off, or how is it attached, or?
right, okay. First question. I have been able to find some of the people doing this. One of the people that I found, there's a group of people doing this to me and at least one other person, well, actually 3 other people that I know, but one of my girlfriends lives in Hawaii. Now, what's really interesting is my name's Casondra and my girlfriend's name is Cassandra, and she lives out in Hawaii. Well, we happen to have the same people targeting and torturing us. So my friend Cassandra and I started working together to figure out, what was going on. And that was when we learned that my friend Cassandra was being ordered as pizza. And she started sending me text messages of people talking about ordering her for pizza. And anyways, in her text messages, I was able to find she was in contact with one of the people from my program, and his name, he was always called Adonis. He went by Adonis in this program. Well, his real name is Sean Fowler, and you can find him on Facebook. He pretends to be a Christian. He pretends to work for God. He thinks that he's holy and righteous, while all the while he was being a pedophile to my children. He was telling me that all children in this program get raped. They're trying to make me forget half the things I wanted to mention because it's condemning of him. But yeah, his name, I found him in real life. His name was Sean Fowler. Basically, he was cooperating with pedophilia and torturing me all summer. And then when I found him in real life, through my friend Cassandra, who's out in Hawaii, I found him in real life on Facebook. And immediately after he knew that I had found him in real life, he stopped targeting me. He was no longer involved in torturing me and being on the channels with me. He no longer has any contact on the channels with me. He dropped out. So these people do have an aspect where they know that what they're doing in real life, it wouldn't be acceptable. They know they don't want to be caught and remembered for it in their real lives, because as soon as I found Sean Fowler, he cut it out. He didn't want me to go around advertising that he had been a pedophile all summer, that he had been torturing me for the last couple of years. And so, when I found him in real life, he cut it out. And so these people really, they don't want their regular lives exposed, because, you could take legal action against them. You could go and hunt them down. You could expose them in various ways. And just like I'm doing now, where I'm talking about, this one person who was involved in doing it. And so, here we are. And, so this is one of the reasons they don't want us to find them in real life, is because we're going to go around talking about, who they really are, their real names, where they live. For instance, Sean Fowler lives down in Orlando, Florida right now. And he's one of the people that was being a pedophile to my kids, torturing me, mind controlling me, deceiving me, raping me for that matter. And, so these people really are around in real life, but they don't want to be found. And he's just one of the people that I found so far.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed in the British, or what happens over here, where they assign a mentor to someone, like to sort of like control them, kind of thing. Like that was going on with the Stephen Ward case that just eternally fascinates me. That Stephen Ward and the whole Profumo scandal, that was all to do with this stuff. But I think that was at a very early stage of this. I think that was to do with this alien human DNA and that sort of thing. But I mean, all sorts of strange things were going on back then, like black magic sex parties and things like that. And his cottage on the river, next to the River Thames in London, that had to be exorcised when he moved out. And so I think that is alien abduction and this so-called holy bloodline. I think that's the main thing, isn't it? And I think anyone who gets into the paranormal, anyone who has a serious interest in the paranormal, I would say, has this higher level of alien human DNA, and they're interested in that, aren't they? And
Yes, and I mean, I think that really definitely comes back to one of the things that we were talking about before, where, at least in my case, these people, they were very, very interested in what they called humanizing me. And that's because I was so involved in activating my DNA and, transforming myself and, being able to activate 12 strands of DNA, activate everything in my mind. I wanted to be able to use 100% of my mind, not just the 10%. Um, I wanted to be able to do all of these things. And so, but it was making me more or less what you might call prater-human or prater-human. And it doesn't mean that I was leaving my human self behind, but it means that I had found, my starseed origins being, partly reptilian, partly Syrian, and partly Pleiadian. And so I was able to activate those parts of myself, and I was able to be in other dimensions. I was able to project myself into my other bodies in those other dimensions. I was doing things that were just absolutely prater-human. And so one of the things when this program took over my life, they kept telling me they wanted to rehumanize me or dehumanize me. So once they got me off of the level that I was at before, where, I was advancing myself as much as I could, they began trying to humanize me. And then they took over the MK Ultra mind control aspect, where they wanted to dehumanize me. They wanted to make me feel like a subhuman. They wanted to humiliate me and dehumanize me and debase me and, do all of these things to me, so that it would basically be putting me through, like Fritz Springmeier's book talks about, all of that trauma-based mind control. And I mean, I feel like part of it is they're seeing who it works on and who will kind of submit to it, who will end up joining them because they've gone through so much trauma, and who will still fight it. And I'm one of those people that, I have a family, I have a husband, and I have kids. I'm going to fight it until the day I die or the day that it stops. Speaking of my little kids.
no, I can resonate with that, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I've had strange sort of experience. A lot of the time, I don't feel human at all. I mean, I've never really felt human. I don't think. I look at this world and I think the things that people get obsessed with is it's not me.
Are ridiculous.
It's just not part of me. And I've been in places where a few years, well, it must have been about in the late 1990s when I started having. I'd find myself in these so-called dreams that weren't dreams, that they were real dreams. Well, I'd be in this sort of underground, sort of like an auditorium where there was me and other people like sitting in these chairs, and they'd be showing us these films. Go on, yeah.
No, you were breaking up. I didn't hear you. Like as soon as you started talking about that, it started breaking up and I couldn't hear you anymore.
That's interesting. Yeah, I was just saying, like when I was back in the 1990s, and it's hard to explain without sounding crazy, like to an outside person, but I just knew something was going on. Something was going on, and I'd have these dreams, but they weren't dreams, where I'd find myself in this like underground stone kind of auditorium. Me and other people would be sitting there on these little chairs, and they'd be showing us these films about time and kind of sort of like, it's hard to explain, sort of like esoteric subjects. And we'd see these films like projected as a normal film, but then these films would come out of the screen and like interact with us and things like that. And things like underground bases where we went through what I can only describe as a psychic assault course, where we'd go through this assault course and people would be throwing like psychic bolts, psychic arrows at us, and we'd have to deflect them and things like that. And they were American actually. I remember it distinctly. Like we'd go through this like assault course, and these American women would be throwing these like psychic arrows at us, and we'd have to deflect them and that. And I mean, that's not a normal dream, is it? When you have things like that. But
absolutely not. And then, so the other weird thing that I would say about your dreams is that now you mentioned that some of the women you were dealing with were American.
Yeah.
And that actually sounds like, in MK Ultra terms, that would be called theta programming. Theta programming was killing with psychic attacks and psychic defenses. That was called theta programming. And, you know, talking about the difference between like alpha programming, beta programming, delta programming, and theta programming was kind of like you were talking about. When I was growing up, I actually had kind of similar dreams to that, but they were not in groups. Mine were more like one-on-one. I was trained with Ashtar from Ashtar Command before I ever knew who Ashtar was. I only found out who Ashtar was in like 2016, but I had been having dreams since I was a teenager and like into 2009, where I was doing personal one-on-one training with Ashtar. I was taught to communicate telepathically in my dreams. I was taught to do all of these different things in terms of like psi abilities and, you know, psychic defenses and using chi. That was another thing. I could open portals in my dreams. I could use my energy work and my chi power to do things in my dreams. And so, you know, I don't know if I would chalk it all up to MK Ultra programming, but it does sound a lot like the theta programming, which is why I would mention it. But, you know, you are in the UK, so it would seem like to me that if it is programming, it all communicates or it all works together between, you know, Britain and America, because you're over there, over in Europe, and I'm over here in America. And so it would almost suggest that if it was MK Ultra, say theta programming, you know, it almost seems like our two governments are working together to accomplish it. But I don't know if it, I mean, I don't feel like my experiences can be chalked up all to MK Ultra, because I just don't believe it. I mean, I think my first experience seeing an alien, I was like 15 or 16, and I woke up one night and there was just an alien gray in my bedroom. So I'm absolutely not going to say, you know, and that has to do with my labs, military abductions and stuff like that. But I'm not going to say that it was all MK Ultra programming, or that, you know, it was all my labs and stuff like that. But, you know, that's just personal opinion, because, you know, I think that's why we're having the radio show. You know, whether or not it was all my labs or whether or not it was all MK Ultra.
That's the thing, yeah, because I was abducted like quite regularly from like the age of 4. But the thing is, I've either never seen what the aliens were, or they've wiped my mind, because I've never seen them. They've never showed themselves to me. But yeah, what was I going to say?
Well, I was about 16 when I woke up. There was an alien gray in my bedroom. I remember freaking the hell out. But I personally don't know whether to attribute all of it to, you know, my lab phenomenon, you know, military abductions or regular alien abductions, because it seems to me like, you know, Eve Lorgan talks a lot about how if you have straight up contact experiences with extra dimensional entities or aliens in general, the alien contact can come first, you know, and then the military contact comes after, leading to the my labs. Right. Sorry, baby.
And I suppose the MyLab things, the MyLab abductions are probably more traumatic than the actual alien abductions. I don't know. But,
yes.
you know,
Yes, I think that that's absolutely true. I think that's true. Because I can't think of, you know, the alien contact and stuff like that I've had. It wasn't that traumatic. But when it came to the MyLab experiences, even alien entities within my dreams working with government, you know, that kind of stuff, I think was more traumatic than the straight up alien contacts. But, you know, and then it comes down to the whole question as to, you know, I spent quite a few years running Ashtar Command group on Facebook and being involved with Ashtar Command. It's not that I'm not involved anymore. It's just that with all of this happening in my life, I'm not that active in it. But it comes down to the question, you know, how much of what is happening on Earth with alien contacts is working with the government. Like, how much of it is...
I think they're. I think what happens with the so-called elite, I think they have so much money and they're so jaded. I think they at the start of their career, put it that way, they exhaust all the options when they pay for sex, and I think then they move on to having sex with children, and I think that's the point when they're approached and they're told, like, there's a whole nother level to this. You know, you can have sex with non-human entities, and I think that's what's going on, and you know all this because they're obsessed with the bloodline and genealogy and king lists, aren't they? Like the Jews are obsessed with like genealogy. The Nazis were. I suppose the Muslims are as well, and that I think that is what's going on, isn't it? That they're interacting with these aliens through sex. I
suppose with the Muslim rates of interbreeding, I think you could be right there, mate.
Well, I think they are. I do think that is what, you know, people in conspiracy theory, people ask, like, what's really going on? And I think what's really going on is the elite, or maybe even sort of like private individuals, like having sex with these aliens. And
I mean, what's more elite than being inducted into like an alien royalty or bloodline?
Well, exactly. That's the whole next level, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the next stage of elite.
Yes.
Isn't it?
I think that is definitely true. I definitely hear what you're saying. And then it kind of makes you wonder about, you know, I mean, because I'm a woman and I had all of these like weird sexual experiences with aliens and reptilians and stuff from the time that I was a teenager, you know, up until I went through this extreme targeting where it's almost like all of my other dimensional connections have been pretty much shut off. It's almost like my entire brain frequency is completely regulated to the point where I can't dream in the astral anymore. They stage all of my dreams. I can't meditate and reach out towards the stars anymore because of the frequency control that they have on me. But it leads me to the question, you know, because of what I experienced, like, how much of what you just said can I apply that to what happened to me? Because, you know, I did start having experiences like that when I was, you know, just a teenager.
Like, I mean, we're in Britain, and Britain is very strange. I mean, the actual sort of like elite of Britain are so strange. It boggles my mind. I mean, the British royals, I mean, Prince William, his birth was induced, like artificially induced. So he was born at the summer solstice, and his bride, she was born during a total eclipse of the moon. So you've got like Prince William was born when the sun was like at its like highest power, and his bride, his wife, was born again when the sun was at its highest power at the total eclipse of the moon. And it's just crazy, Matt.
Yes, and I mean, in terms of like OTO and Thelema, you would call those moon children.
Yeah.
Let me think outside for a minute.
Well, the higher level of the OTO is about having sex with non-human entities, isn't it? Really, I mean, I know they don't they don't like talking about it, but that's in their initiation system, isn't it? I mean,
I can't. Well, I guess I would have to speak from personal experiences because actually I am initiated into OTO.
So was I, actually. So was I. Yeah.
So, I mean, I feel like, you know, maybe because of the things that happened to me when I was growing up and, you know, when I was a teenager and everything that I experienced with Ashtar Command, you know, like maybe that's why I was led into things like Thelema and OTO.
Are you still
I think that might make sense.
Are you still in the OTO?
Yeah, I mean, I pay my dues every year, but I don't have a regular lodge right now. I was kicked out of my regular lodge because I had a lot of questions that my lodge master couldn't answer, and I was trying to heal myself from trauma at the time. I just ended up getting kicked out of my first lodge, and I'm at the point where I want to find another one. And I have found another one, but it's like a couple states away.
Yeah.
But I think that what it really touches on for me, because I loved OTO. I love going to Gnostic Mass. I loved the Gnostic Mass. I think that, and the classes that I got to take there. I absolutely loved going to the classes. But, you know, I think that for me, I really loved it. And I miss my old lodge. But unfortunately, I got kicked out of it. And
Wasn't it because your lodge sister was a Trump supporter?
well, that was another problem with it, yeah. But it does kind of lead me back to what you were saying with the British monarchy and all of that other stuff.
Cassandra,
Because I was, yes.
with oh, what's his name? I'm blanking out. Alistair Crowley being a member of MI6 and the Secret Services. Are you not suspicious of the OTO?
I think that was probably one of the reasons that I got kicked out of my lodge originally. It wasn't because I was suspicious of OTO, but I had a lot of questions because, like I was talking about, the things that happened to me growing up where I was starting to question and I was starting to put together kind of, the things that had happened to me growing up. And then in terms of everything that I was reading from the Thelemic texts, and I wanted to know, like, how much of that applied to what happened to me growing up. And so I started, I think, asking too many questions, and they were questions my lodge master did not have answers to. I ended up getting kicked out because I was starting to put things together that I wasn't ready to deal with at the time, because it was leading me to, freaking out about it. And so, yes, I was suspicious, but I feel like I've maybe been able to deal with it a little bit better since then.
But like I said, the OTO is about having sex with aliens. I mean, I was in the British branch of the OTO, the Kenneth Grant's Typhonian OTO, in I think it was 2004. I wasn't in it very long. I was in it about a year, but I realised that the whole thing that Crowley was on about. I mean, he even says it plainly in his one of his books that the whole key to magic is contacting non-human entities. But I think like the modern
Yes,
OTO seem to shy away from that, don't you think? They seem to shy away from that.
Well, I mean, I think it's veiled. I think that there are different levels of understanding with it, and I didn't grasp that originally. When I was going there. But what I will say is, for me, being at OTO was a lot more about accumulating the knowledge. I wanted a deeper understanding of everything. I wanted to put rituals into practice for myself. Now, I was more of a solitary practitioner. I mean, I like going to Gnostic Mass, but I mostly liked doing rituals with my husband, and by myself. And so practicing like sex magic and stuff like that between me and my husband. But what it came down to for me is in terms of the contact that you're talking about, are you familiar with like gematria?
Yeah. I've done a lot of research on that. Yeah.
Well, I use gematria regularly, and so the only cipher that I use is the ALW cipher. Now, the ALW cipher is known as the ultra-terrestrial cipher code.
Ah, blimey! I was just going to say that. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, that's supposed to be used for decoding those messages and ultra-terrestrial contact.
Yeah.
So for me, a large part of being involved in OTO was self-practicing, learning that knowledge and putting it into practice for myself. But yeah, so that's kind of what I was doing with it, was just learning gematria, learning the keys to that ultra-terrestrial cipher code. And I was
obsessed. I was obsessed with the New Aeon English Kabbalah for years. Yeah, I still am. Yeah.
Yes, me
it's
too.
Incredible. Yeah. I think I know it's a bit of a heretical statement for. By the way, I think the OTO is a fine organisation. I'm not knocking the OTO. It's just I have sort of heretical beliefs about it, because I suspect that the whole reception of Liber al Vel Legis, I don't think it was to start a whole new religion. I think the whole reason for that was to communicate this ALW cipher. I think that was the main reason for it. I don't think it was to start a new religion. I think that was the thing.
And I was under the impression at the time that Aleister Crowley did not actually get to decode the entire thing. meaning that, it was not meant for him to figure out, even if he was the
Oh.
medium that wrote it or channeled it. He was the medium, but it wasn't meant for him to figure out at that time. And so that led to the work of so many other Thelemites and so many other private individuals studying it.
Alan H. Greenfield, wasn't it? He wrote 2 like really good books on it. Yeah.
I was just about to mention Alan Greenfield.
I love Alan H. Greenfield. I think he's great. Yeah, he's amazing.
Okay, I am friends with him on Facebook. It was his birthday recently. I love Alan Greenfield.
Yeah.
I read his writings all the time. And so, that's actually one of the things that they haven't been able to take away from me so far is reading Alan Greenfield's work. I try to stay really consistent with reading his writings because he writes like 10 or 20 pages of, study and writing and different materials like a couple times a week. And so I try to really stay up to date with what he's talking about. And then I also use the cipher codes and I use the decoding on what he's writing to try to make sense of it for my life. So that's where applying the gematria and applying the decoding really comes in.
The thing about all that, though, he talks about how that you can use the cipher to predict when there's going to be like alien landings and that. But I've never worked how do you do that? But I don't know whether like say a UFO landing happens in Chicago, and say, just for instance, that the value is 89, and he seems to say that you can predict when the next like landing's going to occur, but I've never seemed to suss out how you do that. But he doesn't actually say, does he, in his writings? I don't think.
No, and I think that that's one of the things that you have to figure out for yourself. I haven't applied it to that exactly either, because I usually apply it to myself. I usually decode it for myself when I'm going through it. I've never applied it to the alien landings part of it. But the other thing is, if anyone would know, no one would know better than Alan Greenfield, because, he used to be involved in being like the head of OTO. I can't remember. I am ashamed to say I can't remember what his actual degree was. I only know that he stepped back from OTO because he felt like they were not initiating people fast enough. And so people could work their whole lives and only get to a very low degree in OTO. And so he didn't feel like, they were initiating people fast enough to their understanding level. But that's kind of what I remember from it.
Yeah.
So
I know. There was a lot.
I never figured out applying it to predicting alien contact, but I suppose that would be the point of it. Predicting the contact between ultra-terrestrials and humanity. But if you were to apply it to yourself instead of the whole world, which, I mean, that might be just my mentality, you might be able to use it for yourself, because he's also very involved in things like Enochian writing, contacting the angels, and that has to do with, the race of the Elohim, and, whether or not you think that they are an extraterrestrial race or whatever. It kind of leads back into the same thing, all of these different alien races and how you can use, this understanding or this level of understanding magic as a tool, and the cipher codes as a tool, to accomplish that contact, at least personally.
It's a fascinating subject. Yeah, I think I know how you do it to predict the next landing, but the thing is, like, I'm a bit wary of actually doing it, sort of thing, because I was involved with LARM contact, like the Typhonian OTO, the British branch. They were very into the LARM, contacting LARM, and I did actually get into that very seriously and had some like extremely strange experiences with that. And it's like, you can go so far and it will like respond to you, won't it, like the phenomena. And I got so far and I thought, well, that's enough for me. That's just too strange. That's just too strange. Like at the point where I was at that point, I'm different now. I'm more open to it now, but yeah.
But maybe perhaps one of the reasons you were led to study it is because of the contact that you had, growing up or as an adult, because if you get a personal understanding of it, you can use those tools to develop personal relations with with extra dimensional beings or aliens in general. I mean, before I found OTO, before I found the ultra terrestrial cipher code, I was involved with Ashtar, and I had been personally trained by Ashtar before I ever knew who Ashtar was. I didn't find out who my trainer was in terms of Ascended Masters until 2016. And that was when I hit the nail on the head with it. And I realized, like, I felt like I had this major privilege of, training personally with Ashtar, who is very involved in, obviously, Ashtar Command, the Ascended Masters, and all of that stuff that it leads into.
Yeah,
So
it's interesting what you say, that because I think I was like, that was like not forced onto me in a sort of negative way. It was forced onto me in a positive way, because before all this gematria stuff, I just thought it was ridiculous. I was never into maths at school and that. I just thought it was ridiculous. But like a couple of people sort of like put it on to me, and I got into it, and I thought, well, this is amazing. This is like numbers control the world, don't they? That really is like a very
yes,
thing. But
yeah, like you could call it the math of God. That's what I call it.
Yeah.
The math of God, because it doesn't matter what language you apply it to.
And it's not forcing things to fit, is it? Things just fit. It's not as if you have to really try hard to force things to fit.
Most people
Oh, you're breaking up a bit.
Right, exactly. It makes sense. And I mean, I think most people use it for the Hebrew language or the English language. But I think if you were to apply it to Arabic or any other language, you would find the same thing.
I think there's a whole esoteric system concealed within the English language. That's why I'm so fascinated with New Aeon English Kabbalah, because I think that, like, supposing like a group of initiates have a certain system of esotericism, if you write it down in a book or a grimoire, like, books can be edited, books can be burnt, but what if they actually concealed it in the language itself? The shape of the letters and the basic cipher, where A equals 1, B equals 2, and things like that. Because
what about the one book that survived 2,000 years?
Well, exactly. Yeah, I mean, there's certainly codes within the Bible. Yeah, I don't dismiss that. Yeah, but if you take like A equals 1 and B equals 2, C equals 3, etc. There's 26 letters in the English alphabet, and in that simple code, 26 equals God. So they're saying, like, God is the Word according to the Bible, isn't he? And the Logos. It's fascinating stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I mean, I think that at least with Thelemites, when they learn it, they want to apply it to their personal lives. They want to be able to use it to, make contact with what you call aliens, or what you call demons or spirits, or angels for that matter, like Enochian, contacting angels, Elohim. And then that kind of leads you to figuring out, or trying to make sense of for yourself, get an understanding of what all these races are, gives you an understanding. It leads you into exopolitics. And so, thank you, baby. I feel like, anyway, it kind of leads you into the whole exopolitics part of, what's happening with humanity. So it's not just the regular political agenda, but it also has to do with how aliens either interact or have non-interference policies with humanity. And so what that leads into, I was thinking about this last night, one of the things that I remember learning was, we live in Sector 9 of the Milky Way galaxy, and supposedly there's a law of free will here, where humans and other entities, they have free will here, and so do we. They have a greater understanding of technology, and they have a greater understanding and a longer lifespan than regular humans do. And then, so that kind of gives them the advantage. But we also, at least in my Ashtar Command and Galactic Federation knowledge, learned that there's a certain level of non-interference where certain entities have a policy of non-interference.
without our consent, they require our consent, don't they? I think some of them,
Yes.
but
And I think that that actually has a lot to do with the elitist agenda in terms of informed consent, because that's one of the things where, even if you just take, for example, the one example of Donald Trump becoming president, you know, you had this issue of informed consent where the Simpsons episode actually predicted Donald Trump becoming president. And so I think that that's one example of informed consent. You know, I'm not going to say that our voting systems aren't rigged. I'm not going to say that he wasn't selected. But it's one of those instances where they're telling us, they're literally telling us what they're going to do before they do it. And that is the informed consent aspect of it.
I just find all this stuff fascinating. I mean, the OTO, I mean, it was either started or headed by like an intelligent, a spy, basically. And the central secret of the OTO is sex magic. And that seems to be the central secret of alien abduction is sex magic. And what I said before, the Stephen Ward and the Profumo scandal, I mean, that was all about investigating sex magic, or not necessarily sex magic, but the possibilities of sex. That was what they were investigating, and doing all these strange so-called black magic parties and things like that. And that is what's going on, isn't it? I mean, it's hard to talk about, isn't it, without
Yeah.
it's
I
just
think
so
that that's
crazy,
true.
isn't it?
And
It
then,
sounds so crazy when you talk about it, doesn't it?
I think that that absolutely is true. And there's a whole other aspect of it where, you know, contact is one part of it. And then channeling energy is another part of it, because, you know, you have things like these group sex magic parties or group sex magic rituals where, you know, a whole bunch of adults get together and then, you know, they each have partners and stuff like that. This was covered in a book I read a couple years ago. I think it was just called Sex Magic or something like that. It was by Frater UD,
Oh
I
yeah,
think.
yeah.
And then he ends up talking about in his book, you know, how to make these things happen. So how to have these, you know, magical rituals, magical gatherings where you're channeling with all of these other people who are using the sex magic. They're channeling a huge amount of energy and how to use that energy.
Well, it
Um,
attracts entities, doesn't it? I mean, it's like the whole
yes.
Mothman. I mean, Mothman appeared where people were making out down these lovers' lanes, weren't it? You know, it attracts
Yes, and
entities. Yeah, for sure.
I think that's true. And then it gets into, you know, the different types of entities that you might be attracting based on your vibrational frequency and based on, you know, what is happening when you're doing it. Let's say, you know, you're doing it with your partner, you're just two people doing it. Or if you're in a room dynamic where there's like, say, 5 couples all channeling the energy.
Do you
Well, if
think
it's a
do you think the
positive
porn
experience
industry
for
could
every.
be a part of this then?
Yes, and I was going to get into how that has to do with, you know, depending on the porn being made, you know, you're either having a positive experience where you're emitting or omitting, I should say, not emitting, you're omitting all of this positive loose energy. You know,
Mm.
it's kundalini, it's very positive. And so that would attract a much higher frequency being than, say, you know, people that are tortured, people that are, you know, having negative loosh for archons. Anytime that it's trauma based, anytime that it's a negative sexual interaction, you're going to be feeding these negative archons, these beings that feed off of the negative loosh energy.
Well, so
Um, and so,
say it best like a porn star. They're just kind of bored rather than anything else. That's still like negative energy, isn't it?
yeah, but I don't think it would be as negative as, say, you know, some of that porn where it's like women getting tortured or torture parties, like stuff from the kink or whatever. You know, you have these huge, almost elitist looking parties where it's, you know, humiliation and torture fetishes. And there's all these women getting, you know, right straight out tortured. And, you know, when you start having that experience where where you're in fear and you're in pain and you're going through torture and trauma, you're going to attract those entities that feed off of that fear, feed off of the negative sexual energy, and feed off of, the fear. I'm losing my words for it, but
Well,
feed off of all
there
of
seems
that.
to be what this elite group likes. They like all this dark, sort of like vampiric type energy. Because I'm convinced, like most of the porn industry is satanic in not in a Judeo-Christian sense, but in a like literal evil sense. I mean, to put it bluntly, like a pornographic video, everyone is jerking off to this pornographic video. I mean, that energy has to go somewhere, doesn't it? I mean, where does it
Yes,
go? I mean,
absolutely.
Well, not only that.
And
If
I
you
think
read
that,
most of these porn stars' bios, they were most of them abused in childhood.
yeah.
yep. And actually, I actually have my own channel on X videos, but I don't do porn like that. Like I've only done personal videos with my husband. Most of it was involved. I was doing tantra. And so if you look me up on X videos, you'll find my channel under Casondra Starseed. But you'll notice that, especially the last couple of years, I was very focused on using tantra, showing people that making love can be much more attractive than watching people fake having sex or being bored having sex or any of that other stuff. And it was very popular. I think that a lot of people wanted. I think that a lot of people wanted to see real couples actually making love who loved each other. And so, but that's a different frequency. That's an entirely different frequency than, like I said, girls being tortured or girls being bored or any of that. And so, I think with that energy, you can use it as a ritual to, um, you can use it as a ritual for yourself. Like if you were the one making the porn, hang on, hang on, hang on. And then, so you could try to channel that. You could try to channel that into your own success. You could use it as a formula. Say if you were using like the key of Solomon and you had all of your sigils set up, you could channel that energy for whatever you wanted. But that would be one positive way of using it. That would be one really positive way of taking that energy and channeling it into something good. Well, of course, not everybody does that. Some people use it for very satanic rituals. Some people use that energy, especially if it's like that negative torture energy, and they could channel it that way. They could use that energy instead of the love energy. And actually, that gets into, I know we talked about Alan Greenfield, but it leads into my favorite quote from Alan Greenfield. I don't know if you probably did, but The Secret Rituals.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite books. Yeah.
Oh my God, it's one of my favorite books too. It is one of my favorite books too. And then, so, my favorite quote from that book, he actually says, it's in the last quotations right before the book ends. And so he says, they eat our fear like hungry ghosts.
Oh yeah.
To eat love instead is death unto them and their kin. Meaning to say that, these negative archons, these negative beings that eat that fear energy, for them to eat love instead, they don't get any sustenance off of it. It kills them instead. It's like they're surviving off of that negative louche energy. That's what they
we were saying this last week about Brexit, weren't we, Zero? We were
Yeah.
saying like the frustration that's coming from people over Brexit. I mean, they must be absolutely stuffed because they've had so many negative energies just coming out of the Brexit not happening.
This elite, they seem to be so. I think they think that they're the elite, but they're really just very sad people, aren't they? They're very kind of like
yes, absolutely. And
twisted people, aren't they?
Well, the thing is, they're on a knife edge, aren't they? Because if we all woke up tomorrow and decided we'd had enough of them, they'd be gone.
Yeah,
that's the thing, isn't it?
Yep. Actually, I was involved in a group on Facebook that was based out of the UK, and it was a whole group of like thousands of people. And I think the group was called something like Overthrowing the British Monarchy, or something about that. Taking Back Our Country, Power to the People of Britain. That's what it was called. not overthrowing, but yeah, that was what the group was called, Power to the People, in terms of, and it was a Britain-based group, all about, you know, getting rid of the English monarchy. And that kind of ties into one of the stories I was reading this morning. I was watching the news with my grandmother this morning, and I saw a little clip come across CNN, and it said something about Prince Andrew stepping back from his royal duties. So I instantly went and picked up my phone because I'm very involved in and outspoken about overthrowing the pedophile elite. I am very anti-pedophiles, and so I guess you guys probably have heard more about it than I have, because I just saw a little thing about it and I read about it in the news after I saw it. But they said Prince Andrew was stepping back from his royal duties because last week he did a interview about Jeffrey Epstein and his involvement with Jeffrey Epstein, and it was apparently. What's that?
Oh, everyone's gone quiet. You went quiet there, Casondra.
Oh, that's weird.
Oh, he just cut out there. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I was reading, obviously, that Prince Andrew had stepped back from his royal duties, and apparently what happened was when he did that interview with not with Jeffrey Epstein, excuse me, the interview about his involvement with Jeffrey Epstein, it was so damning to the British public that it had a 6% approval rate.
Yeah, that was on the BBC Newsnight show. Yeah,
I thought it was Channel 4, wasn't it? Oh,
yeah.
It was Emily Maitlis, wasn't it? Yeah, it was.
BBC. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the royal family. There's some weird stuff going on there. I don't know, because I mean,
yes, and
they're either dressing up as I was just going to say they're either dressing up as Nazis and doing Sieg Heils, like the Queen's. There's a photo of the Queen doing the Sieg Heil and that.
When they were kids, wasn't it? It was the Queen Mother's sister and the Queen Mother as well, wasn't it?
But there's a weird schizophrenic thing going on, because at the same time they think they're part of the holy bloodline of Judea, which is just freaks me out. I don't know what's going on with that family, but it's pretty weird.
Well, and especially if you apply it to them being the Draco reptilians, or the powerful dragon families that are ruling the world. Yeah. And so, what does that say exactly about, them believing what you just said? Now, I'm not going to say that people who are reptilian, that, they're evil or anything like that, because I'm one of those people. I definitely am. But what I'm going to say is, these are the dragon families that are ruling the world. And, they're involved in pedophilia, they're involved in child sacrifice, they're involved in a whole bunch of really scary things that are constantly being covered up, all the while they have the most gold in the entire world. They're ruling the world, and they're getting away with all these things. And so I feel like, eventually people would overthrow that, because they would wake up and realize that by letting them have that authority, letting them, rule over all these people, they're getting away with child sacrifice, they're getting away with pedophilia, just like Prince Andrew being involved with Jeffrey Epstein. And what does that say about the leaders of Britain as well as the leaders of America, where Bill Clinton and Donald Trump were also involved with Jeffrey Epstein, and so was Prince Andrew? That means that we have the leaders of two of, the most powerful countries in the world, in terms of, let's say, the European Union, or I'm losing the one that I'm looking for, but in terms of world power, we have, Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew from the British monarchy, these very powerful people in the world, and they're all involved with Jeffrey Epstein, child prostitution, and pedophilia. These are the people that are ruling over us.
Well, there's also that weird temple on his island as well, isn't there?
I apparently have never noticed that.
Yeah, but there's all kinds of videos and stuff if you look it up. Yeah, there's a weird temple on his island. You've seen it, haven't you, Zero?
Yeah. Sort of Greco-Roman, sort of weird, sort of New Agey type of. God knows what it is. I don't know. But, because I mean, people regularly turn up dead on the Queen's estates and things like that, and That's, I don't know if
Yep.
that's known in America, but it's quite a regular thing of like people being found dead on the Queen's estate. And there's a very strange one, not recently, but someone was found dead on the Queen's Sandringham estate in Norfolk, and like almost like a few hours later, there was a photo of the Queen dressed in these strange sort of like purple kind of robe type thing, riding a horse on the very same land where this body was found. And, you know, they send these messages out, don't they, through the mass media to say sort of like, I don't know, we done it. That was a successful ritual or something. They're all
Yes,
doing
and
it,
then,
aren't they?
okay. Remember a couple of years ago, I never found out if this was a hoax or not because, you know, I'm from America, but there was this like there was this leaked video where apparently someone had uploaded onto the royal website like a video of Queen Elizabeth shapeshifting or something like that. I never found out if it was a hoax or not, but I remember I think it was when I was at my last lodge at OTO when it got leaked.
I haven't seen that. I've seen that one when there's that naked man sort of like trying to escape from the Queen's palaces. I mean, you see that, haven't you, Hemi? When that,
I remember that. There was also that guy that broke in, wasn't there? And just sat on their bed.
Yeah, but apparently he was invited in. I read that she invited him in to sit on her bed. God knows what's going on.
Yeah, and then of course I've seen the videos where I saw one video where there was a child jumping out of a window at Buckingham Palace. That was like all over the internet.
Nah,
but yeah, I remember that one. I think over here we don't get quite as much media footage of the British monarchy as you guys do. But I remember recently I watched Donald Trump going over to meet with the Queen and all that other stuff. We did get to see that much.
Yeah, over here it's like old money that they stole off everyone. It's Freemasonry, British intelligence, and the military. This is just a very strange. I've always found, well, it just is strange. It's not me finding it strange. It just is strange. They've got all these strange like statues on their country mansions and things. All this Eyes Wide Shut type stuff.
Well, Eyes Wide Shut.
Yes.
Eyes Wide Shut was filmed in England, wasn't it? Part of it.
That was filmed on that Rothschild's house, wasn't it? In Buckinghamshire.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have seen so many different films where they used that mansion. I think they used the same one in Batman Begins, actually, because Batman Begins was one of my favorite. Well, that was my favorite Batman movie to this day. But I'm pretty sure they used that same mansion in that movie as well. Yeah, and it is really weird because, you start to see they use that mansion in a lot of movies. And I have the director's cut of Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah. I just think it's probably hard to comprehend if you're over in America, but in England, like there's no room whatsoever. You can't really do anything. But if you're one of these rich people in these country mansions, you certainly could get up to this Eyes Wide Shut stuff, because a lot of these country mansions have a farm attached, so you could sacrifice animals, kind of like with sort of like no one really knowing what's going on, and you can patrol it with so-called gamekeepers with shotguns and things like that. And I think all sorts of weird stuff goes on there. Like I said, that Stephen Ward's house, his cottage.
That mansion in Buckinghamshire also appeared in Brazil.
Really?
Yeah. It's called, I think it's called Mentmore Towers. It's in the village of Mentmore in Buckinghamshire.
Because they actually did hold Eyes Wide Shut parties there, didn't they, in the 70s, with all the weird masks on and that? Yeah, that's crazy stuff. Yeah.
Did they grow pampas grass outside? Did they?
Yeah. Oh, you better explain that to Casondra.
Oh, you can explain. I'll leave you to explain.
Well, oh God. Well, I don't know if you know pampas grass, but apparently, like, if you grow pampas grass in your garden, that means you're into wife swapping and things like that. But
That is crazy. That is crazy.
It's like a
Oh,
British urban myth. So there you go. You know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure urban myth. um,
But these
but
people are
yeah, I think
crazy. They're crazy. They've got like statues of demons on their country mansions, and they've got those like Greco-Roman sort of fake temples, haven't they? I mean, they're just crazy.
yes, and we have similar things to talk about in the United States, where when George Bush was president and Dick Cheney, um, this was several years ago, but it was coming out that they were involved in these human hunting parties. So I mean, and supposedly at the human hunting parties, they were hunting small children, and people think that a lot of people around in America think that some of, or a great number of the missing children that go missing in America every year, and probably all over the world, a lot of people think that it's involved with not only child sacrifice, but these human hunting parties and things like that.
Oh,
Oh,
I've got another weird film that was filmed there. It's Philip Kaufman's Marquis de Sade biographical film Quills from 2000.
I've seen that. Yeah,
Yeah, that was filmed
yeah.
there as well. That's weird. That's weird having the Marquis de Sade linked with it, isn't it?
Oh, well, that's what they're all into, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm sure they'd be into all that. Yeah. I forgot what I was going to say now. Yeah. What was that you said, Cassandra? Something about.
Um, about human hunting parties.
Yeah, I mean, over here we're supposed to be having like a big legal investigation into all this sort of like British establishment paedophilia, but that seems to have been derailed, doesn't it? I mean, we've had like two or three like people who head it who've resigned and all that. Jimmy Savile and all
Speaking of the
that.
human hunting parties, doesn't Jeff Bezos hunt retards or something? Didn't I hear that as a story, or am I going mad?
I'm not familiar with him.
Jeff Bezos, the Amazon owner.
Well, he was doing it. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Well, I don't want to cast aspersions, but yeah, I wouldn't be
Allegedly.
surprised.
We'll just say allegedly.
Because these people have absolute contempt for sort of people supposedly below them, don't they? So, yeah, I can certainly believe that.
Yeah, and I think that that's very true. And I think that's why it's so troubling for me when, we have these pedophiles, that are leading our country, ruling over our country, and the connection between Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, all of these people, because, it doesn't matter if it's in Britain or America, we're having the same type of reports coming out where these elitist people, they're involved in pedophilia together, as far as George Bush, and Dick Cheney with the human hunting parties. But yeah, stuff
They
like
seem to
that.
just get away with it, though, don't they? I mean, it's all out there. It's obvious what's going on, but they seem to just be above it all, don't they? I don't know. There's some sort of strange spell they're casting on people where the actual evidence is presented to people, but people just carry on, don't they? It's almost as if it's like a cartoon or something.
Well, what they do on the news, don't they? You whack on the X music, have a bit X Files music, have a bit of a chuckle, and there you go. You've debunked it, haven't you?
Right, and they present it like entertainment. I mean, the American mentality that I can't stand with politics is that Americans seem like they don't actually care about what's actually happening in America. A lot of Americans have the mentality that it's just entertainment or it's just a joke, and not what's happening with the pedophilia and stuff, but like, with who makes it to become president and what's happening on the news. It's almost like that Roman gladiator sort of mentality where it's presented to us almost as entertainment. And so many people just don't take it seriously enough. They don't apply what's actually happening.
Well, somebody said, didn't they? They said politics is Hollywood for ugly people, didn't they? I can't remember who said it.
Yes. And I mean, I feel like they don't apply it to, how what these politicians are doing, it affects the regular people. And I mean, I would hope that in America right now, we're having the impeachment hearings for Donald Trump. Obviously, I'm really looking forward to having Donald Trump impeached if that does happen. I'm really hoping for that. But it leads me into thinking, like, maybe we do have enough people in this country that are seeing that ever since Donald Trump took office, we've had more racism than we ever had since segregation. And that's just one problem. Things have exasperated in our country exponentially ever since he took office, not just with us targeted individuals. Ever since Donald Trump took office, my targeting went, crazy. That was when it started for me. But, we have all these other problems, especially with racism and hatred, all of these things that Donald Trump is feeding in this country.
Yeah.
And I'm really hoping that he gets impeached because he's not good for our country. And it's not entertainment to me because I take it very seriously. And I'm hoping that enough other people are taking it seriously as well.
Well, they want people to be like hating each other, don't they? They love it, don't they? Because it diverts attention away from what they're getting up to. I mean,
yes, and it's absolutely a divide and conquer agenda.
Yeah.
When we're divided by race and divided by religion and divided by fear and fear of other races and religions and fear of hatred, these are the tactics that the elites use to control the population. I mean, we're talking about population control with every way they can divide us, whether we're divided by politics or race or religion or gender orientation or sexuality. These are the things that divide us into little tiny groups of people. So if we were to get through and stop being divided and see everybody as equal and stop hating each other, we would be able to unite the entire country and then probably the entire world. But we would have to be a very coexisting society where, we're tolerant of each other, where we're not afraid of Muslims, where we're not racist anymore, where we're not religiously killing each other. All of these types of things that are dividing us, we're playing right into that elite agenda. It's all divide and conquer of the people. And then if we were to be able to overcome those things, we would see humanity triumphant. We would see humanity get together and overthrow all of that, because we wouldn't be divided anymore.
It's so effective. The divide and conquer ploy. It's so effective. Yeah. I mean, we see it over here, but the trouble with that is that they're doing that to divide us, but at the same time, the way they're doing it over here is that it's a very how can I explain it? It's like they've weaponized Muslims, haven't they, Hemi? Kind of.
Yeah.
They've weaponized a whole race of people, and it's like it's not that we want to hate them, but the thing is they're taking over our country, so it's like it's difficult to sort of unite when they're sort of blowing us up and things like that. Which they're probably mind controlled. The people are doing that, but
the thing is they're in a place where they don't belong, so they can't. It's they're not living by their own rules, are they? And I think that's where the problems lie, don't they?
It's just not helping anyone, isn't it? It's not helping us, and it's not helping them. They should be where they naturally belong in their country, and we should be here. And then, but they're forcing us to interact with each other, and we're not going to get on, or most people aren't going to get on because we're so sort of like polarized. I mean, that's exactly what they want to happen, isn't it? It's just crazy. I don't know. It's mental. They're playing a big game, aren't they? 3D chess, and they're
yes.
Well, I think it's because they've got no more money to accumulate, have they? It's like there's very little money they can accumulate now without really destroying stuff. So I think they just play games with people.
They've turned into like vampiric monsters, aren't they? They're just like some sort of crazy cosmic dictator who just think that they can just like manipulate everyone. Although what the hell they're trying to achieve, I don't know.
Well, I think it has to do with population management and population control. Because on the one hand, you've got to think about it from the Arabs and Muslims' position where their homes were bombed and they had to leave their homes and become refugees. They wouldn't have done that if we hadn't gone and bombed their countries. But on the other hand, I understand what you're saying, but I think it feeds the bigger agenda for them, which is probably they displaced those people and then they brought them in as refugees to all of these countries, which, like you said, it does make it so that, we have a high number of refugees in our countries. That leads us into interacting with and having these Muslims and, Muslims all over the world displaced from their homes and in our communities. And for me, I always viewed that as a good thing, because I always actually wanted to go live in Egypt. I've been learning Arabic and stuff like that. And so for me, I was kind of hoping that it would tone down the fear of the Muslim population, because I know, at least in my country, there's a really high amount of fear when it comes to Muslims. People are very fearful of Muslims. People are not very accepting of them. But I feel like one of the motives for having done that in the first place might have been to get these Muslims into communities to, I'm missing the word I'm looking for, but to kind of get them
integrate.
Integrated.
Yeah.
Good word. Absolutely. And then, so I feel like over time, having Muslims around would become more normal if, like you said, they weren't being used for all of these terrorist activities, bombing and stuff like that, which I don't blame the Muslims for. I might blame the mind control aspect, because, we have a huge mind control problem going on. But for me, mostly, I mean, around here, we haven't had like a huge problem with Muslims raping people or doing bombings or anything like that. And so for me, it's about, seeing those people getting integrated into the melting pot. And if you think about it, those people that were displaced from Syria, the people that were displaced from other Arabic and Muslim nations, they never would have made it to America in the first place if we hadn't gone and bombed their country. And then we had this huge influx of refugees. Well, that adds them to the melting pot for the United States.
Well, it's a win-win for the elite, isn't it? Because they bomb these countries and make like obscene amounts of profit from the arms manufacturers.
And the
so
rebuilding program.
Yeah, they're making money.
It's a whole thing, and then they bring them over here, and they're angry about what it looks like we've done to them. It's like the problem is the Muslims get blamed, not the people who brought them in.
Yeah. We all used to get along in the 60s and 70s. I mean, I know people who used to get into a camper van and go off to Iran and Iraq, and then we all used to get along before we started like bombing them. I mean, it's crazy. It really is.
Yes, and I mean, I didn't get to live through that part of that century, but I wish that the world could be more like that again. Because it's really my goal and one of my dreams that I really want to go over to the Middle East. I want to spend time in Cairo. I'm a huge Palestinian activist. I wanted to do more or less like diplomatic work, especially for Palestine and stuff like that. So I want to be able to get over to the Middle East. I want to be able to do that stuff. And you're right. Ever since this whole war agenda, the military industrial complex took over, I think that has become less and less okay, because, they're going to see us as the enemy. And then through mainstream media, Americans are being programmed and biased to see them as the enemy. So we're being played against each other in that respect.
Yeah, it's just under the surface, there's some very extreme beliefs going on. I mean, you've got the American Zionist Christians, and you've got the Jews, which, I mean, that's a whole other subject. But I don't know. I just don't like. I don't want to hate anyone. I don't want to hate anyone. But
no, I'm right there with you, and I feel the same way, because I get really frustrated when I try to go to churches and it's a Zionist Christian agenda where they're actually promoting the genocide of Palestine by promoting, having Israel take Palestine away and reconquering the land of Palestine. Well, that's not acceptable to me. That Zionist agenda that's being played from Jews and Christians, and those people are playing right into it. It's not okay with me. I'm not one of those people that are going to go and advocate for the killing of Palestinians, the resettling of their land, and the conquering of that land in the name of Israel. It's just not okay to me. I'll never be an advocate for that. And actually, I saw last week on Instagram something really interesting, where an Israeli I'm losing the word. there was supposed to be a lecture over at Harvard University. Now, Harvard University, right up there with Yale, being one of the most prominent universities in all of America. There was this guy that came from Israel to do a lecture at Harvard, and he was going to talk to the Harvard students about, the benefits and how they do Israeli settlements taking the land of Palestine. Well, the students of Harvard, they actually ended up staging a protest, a silent protest, and every single student that was at that lecture did a walkout holding signs that said Israeli settlements are war crimes. And so they were all holding those signs, saying Israeli settlements are war crimes. And basically they all walked out of the lecture, leaving that guy who came there to do that lecture, feeling
Yeah.
feeling like, okay, these are like, the children of some of the richest kids in America going to Harvard, obviously. And, all of the students at Harvard walked out of that lecture basically saying in unanimity that, this is not okay. We are smart enough to realize that these Israeli settlements are, war crimes. You have no right to be doing that. We don't support the Israeli agenda. And that was really important to me, because we're talking about some of the richest children in America, some of the smartest children in America going to Harvard and doing that silent protest. And that meant a lot to me.
But behind all that resettlement and this like horrible stuff that goes on over there, I mean, there's an occult agenda behind it all, isn't there? But this whole the rebuilding of the third temple, I mean, and that's all connected with Freemasonry over here. I mean, they're all into that. Like they what are they called? The Royal Arch branch of Freemasonry. You see themselves as like the elite branch. I mean, they want to rebuild the third temple, and they seem to believe that when they rebuild it, some sort of Messiah is going to like descend and rule the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then I think that what you just said actually touches on the whole problem with creating a Messiah and having a Messiah, because you've got to think about it from several perspectives. You've got people that would acknowledge the Messiah if it was from certain bloodlines or if it was created in a certain way. And then you have all these people who are aware of, you've got all of these people who are aware of, the different bloodlines and the bloodlines of the fallen angels. Well, people who are understanding of, the bloodlines of the Anunnaki and the fallen angels, they're not going to want to acknowledge like a Messiah being created from that bloodline. And so then you have, that very what's the word I'm looking for? You have people who would only acknowledge a Messiah being created one way or, the opposite way. And so it creates these two groups of people who would only acknowledge a Messiah if it was, created through one certain bloodline or not, or the other one, and then, hey, bro.
This reminds me of some of the radio shows I used to be on. Hey,
Sorry, my family's all getting home right now. My brother just got home and my children are home. So
Fox from Anonymous Radio Redux. How's it going, brother?
We can wrap it up if you want. That's right.
No, yeah, well, actually,
Hemi, what are you doing, Hemi?
What am I doing? I'm here.
All right. I'll say. Shall we? I was just thinking, like, these people are absolutely crazy, and they're trying to get this Messiah to descend into this rebuilt third temple, and they've got all there's that group, isn't there? That they're getting all the sort of like ritual items available, but they need the red heifer, don't they? They need the red heifer to appear, but they're just going to genetically engineer it, aren't they? I think.
Yep, actually, on my not radio show, on my channel the other night, I was reading something about the first red heifer being created in Israel recently, and it tied in with this whole timeline of Donald Trump or whatever. I mean, but from my perspective, it's not that I wouldn't welcome a Messiah. It's not that I wouldn't welcome the return of Jesus Christ or anything. It's that I would never support a Messiah that furthers the Israeli agenda. For me, it would be more about the return of Jesus Christ, but not the furthering of the agenda for Israel. Like, So, that's what it's about for me.
Well, it's the Israel agenda, but it's also like the high levels of British Freemasonry. I mean, they're aligned with all this as well. They want that to happen, but I don't think I trust this Messiah if he appears in this third temple.
Well, it sounds like they're going to make the Antichrist, not the Messiah, doesn't it?
Well, that's what it sounds like, isn't it?
And that's actually something I was thinking about the other night, because to me, any sort of a Messiah or any sort of that person that would show up and try to, reconquer Palestine. And one of the messages I got from a Christian radio station the other day was saying, Jerusalem is in the hands of its enemy right now. Now that's my standpoint. So any sort of person or being that shows up as a Messiah is gonna appear more of an Antichrist to me. Now that's actually kind of playing, Christianity versus Judaism in that sense, if it's not Zionist Christianity, because not all Christians, and especially also not all Jews, are going to believe in that agenda. They're not all going to believe in, the Messiah being the king of Israel in that way, because not everybody's going to be played into it. But what it really comes down to for me is that, for me, that would seem more of like an Antichrist. That would be way more like an Antichrist than a Messiah.
According to the book of Revelation, we're all going to think he's the Messiah, though, aren't we?
Exactly. And so I feel like that has to do with what I was talking about on my live stream the other night, where the whole world is a stage. And so, they're kind of acting out the Bible in that way. They're using gematria and the occult to manifest these things, to act out all of these prophecies, and using the world as a stage. And so that would be really obvious to me that, the king of Israel would actually be the Antichrist. He would not be a Messiah.
And it's like, what is this Messiah going to do when he's on the throne there? I mean, I don't think it's going to be good, is it? Yeah.
Exactly.
I think if he does appear, I think he's going to want to wipe out the whole Palestinian race. It seems to me, because they're not going to not going to support him, are they?
No, and neither do I. And I take the standpoint from the Palestinians. Like, I absolutely don't believe in the reconquering of that land for Israel. In terms of religious domination in the world, that's the Jewish agenda, reconquering that land in the name of their God. And in that sense, every single time that a land is reconquered in the name of the people there, the amount of religious followers that has the highest amount in that area is going to be their God that is ruling over it, if you will. If you understand how people's spiritual energy and people's energy that they're using for worship, if you have a high amount of Christian followers in one area, then their God is ruling over that one area. You know what I mean?
So who do you believe the Jews' God is? Because some people believe it's Moloch, don't they? The volcano demon.
Okay, that is such an interesting question, because obviously I have done so much research into Jewish occultism, and they believe in the 72 names of God. They believe in, the name for God is 72 names long. And so we have this whole thing where you may call him Yahweh or Jehovah or Adonai or Hashem Farash. These are all different names of that God, the 72 names of God. However, you're right. And a lot of people believe that they make sacrifices to Azazel to atone for their sins. And what does that say about, the gods that the God that they're worshiping? And is Moloch another name for one of these? Is Moloch a name for one of these names of God? And then, so, then you have the issue with Christianity, where in Christianity, you're told to stay away from, these paganized gods that are engaged in child sacrifice and stuff like that. I covered this actually quite a bit on one of my other vlogs a couple days ago. And that doesn't mean that I'm against paganism or anything like that. But, you have to put together these different pieces where the Bible warns us of staying away from the paganized gods that are involved in child sacrifice. And then you have Jewish people who, you know, do sacrifices to Azazel to atone for their sins. Maybe that's not exactly child sacrifice unless you start factoring in the elitist agenda where all of these children are going missing. And you might not label that as Jewish sacrifices. You might label it more as satanic sacrifices. And so you kind of start wondering all of these questions. Like, I actually do have Jewish family. My stepfather and my mother are Jewish. Now, they're not child sacrificers. They don't go out and sacrifice a goat, you know, to atone for their sins. But there are, you know, obviously Jewish people who do sacrifice to atone for their sins. There are lines being blurred here and questions that we all have in terms of the elite Jewish hierarchy, you know, and those people who are conquering the world for their God and, you know, basically in turn ruling the world. And so we have kind of this change from, you know, obviously during the Third Reich and during Hitler's time, where Jewish people were in the Palestinians' position, Jewish people were being killed, and Jewish people, you know, were going through the Holocaust. And then now, in this day and age, you actually have Jewish people doing that exact same thing to the Palestinians. So it's almost like the shoe's on the other foot, where, you know, during the 1940s, Jewish people were being killed. And now that Jewish people have all the power that the Third Reich had, you know, the shoe is on the other foot. Now the Jewish people are the ones killing the Palestinians and, you know, engaging in warfare and, you know, resettlement of land and, you know, and then let's not even talk about, you know, between U.S. Israeli arms deals and how it ends up playing into ISIS and all of these other U.S. backed alphabet agency created organizations that are just only created to destabilize the entire Middle East so that, you know, it can be under the control of these nations that are doing it in the first place. They want to have control over them. So they're destabilizing these nations in the Middle East so that, you know, they can put in puppet governments and they can control the entire Middle East to their own agenda.
And I suspect it's not like, you know, people go on about the Jewish elite, but I don't think you have to be Jewish to be part of this elite, because, you know, back in the, was it the 1940s, like the actual creation of the state of Israel was done by British Freemasonry, like the Holy Royal Arch Freemasonry. They actually got together and created the state of Israel in the first place, and they weren't Jewish. So this cult is not just Jewish. It's there's all sorts of people.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then one of the other parts of that is that during the 1940s, when Israel was created, Hitler was one of the people who took Jewish people from Germany and I think also Poland. And then he was sending them down to Palestine to settle the land of Israel. There are some pictures that I found from that time that show that, where Hitler had been displacing some of the Jewish people, not necessarily gas chambering and eradicating all of them, but he sent some of them down to Palestine, and they ended up, like you were just talking about, being a part of settling the land of Israel. And then obviously from that, it's grown into the nation that it is today.
Yeah, it's what on earth are these people on about? I don't know. What on earth do they want? I don't know. It seems to me that they want Satan to come on the earth. It seems like it, doesn't it? I mean, it's what they like, doesn't it? They like him. They like killing people. They like torturing people, and physically and mentally. And I mean, the Bible does say that Satan rules the world, doesn't he? In one passage in the Bible, I'm inclined to agree. You know.
Oh wait, never mind.
And then there's also a little bit in Jewish texts talking about how, at least in the Kabbalah, Lucifer is supposed to be in charge of Malkuth, which is the earth plane. And then in Jewish Kabbalah also, on top of the Qliphoth, you have the Sephiroth, and it talks about Adonai being the king of Malkuth. So on the lower plane, you have Lucifer managing it, and then on the higher plane, you would have Adonai managing it. So that's the difference there. But then on the same note, you kind of have, you know, like you were pointing out, it's almost like they want Satan to rule this world. Well, if they can manage to, you know, not necessarily like spread Satanism, but if they can conquer the world with their gods and their agenda, they are essentially spreading that. You know what I mean? They're reconquering the world with it, and they're using that to manage the people. And so that actually does kind of lead into the Bible topic of where it says, you know, when Satan comes and he rules the world, Satan will have but a short time here. And I think that that's the part that I usually remember. Like, hopefully, it's not going to be like the Third Reich that will reign for 1,000 years. Although in terms of ages, 1,000 years isn't that long, but for humanity it is. That's like 10 generations that Satan could be used ruling the world. But regardless, I think that it does play into the world being a stage, these people acting it out. But then there's the difference between what they're manifesting very satanically and then the overthrowal of the evil that's conquering the world. So you have, again, this duality, the duality of good versus evil. And ultimately, you know, people are going to be what manifests who wins. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so if they can demoralize the people and they can turn the people more satanic, you know, and mind control, trauma-based mind control, targeting, stuff like that, if they can demoralize the population and turn them more satanic, you know, you'll have that manifesting here, and then that will factor into the outcome for Earth. But if they can't manage to do that, you will have these people who are maintaining that high frequency, who, you know, like the positive aspect of Lucifer, the light bearer, trying to spread that flame and manifest that positivity, and, you know, not playing into the demoralizing of character of humanity. So it kind of splits the people. And then obviously that's the surprise outcome that we're all waiting for. You know, at any one point on Earth, are there more good people than bad people, or positive people than negative people? And that has to do with the overall frequency of Earth, you know, and that has to do with why they're trying to control the population. Because the more that they can control that population and the more that they can control the people, their minds, their religions, everything, you know, that has to do with the outcome of Earth and the control of the Earth frequency.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I try and remain optimistic, because evil doesn't win, does it? It never seems to win. And
exactly. And so that fosters my belief, like yours, that good will always prevail over evil, and that, you know, people are inherently good, not inherently evil. Even if, you know, we have people that are tempted to do evil things, people that would naturally be psychopathic, people that would naturally be prone to evil, you know, I think that not only just with hope, we're always going to have more good people, more people that would rather do good things than do negative things, you know. So I mean, I believe in humanity triumphant, and I believe in the triumph of good over evil in that respect. Absolutely.
yeah, that's just the pendulum swings one way and the pendulum swings the other way. And
absolutely.
I hope the Great White Brotherhood step in quite soon, because I'm getting a bit tired of all this stuff. But yeah,
right. And like you said, those are words from the Kabbalion. You know, the pendulum swings back and forth, and that has to do with momentum, etc. So, you know, these are if you think about that in terms of the population, these are the tools and tactics that the elitists are using to control us and to control the population and to control the sway of public opinion and what people think about certain things. And, you know, that leads into a whole larger issue.
Mom, what color do you like?
yeah, these arrogant people.
Yes.
Arrogant.
So I'm making a little small game thing.
Okay. Sorry, my daughter's sitting here with me.
That's all right.
She's over here coloring. Allie, you want to say hi?
Hi.
Can I ask what is Project Orion?
Okay. Project Orion started in the 1950s. That was a government project spearheaded by the American Air Force. I know over there you guys have British Royal Air Force and stuff like that. Well, our American Air Force was they were the ones in charge of Project Orion. Project Orion was the management of contact between aliens and humans. And so um, the Air Force kind of being the intermediary in exopolitics. This leads into my labs, military abductions, the cooperation between government and ETs, and exopolitics in general. And so when these people targeting me and gang stalking me and everything that I've been talking about on my live stream, when they first started dealing with me, I was told that I was in Project Orion. They called it Project Orion for like almost 2 winters. Every winter, I was told that I was in Project Orion. Now, obviously, that leads into a whole psyop that they were creating, where they were masquerading as, aliens, entities, and they were faking all of that phenomenon. But it doesn't rule out the fact that Project Orion probably still exists. Project Orion, I would say the real Project Orion, not the PSYOP fake version. But the real Project Orion obviously exists because we still have exopolitics, we still have contactees, we still have my labs, which are military abductions, especially ones in cooperation with aliens and extraterrestrials, extra dimensional beings. There's still some level of military contact and cooperation with aliens and extraterrestrial beings, and that kind of leads into like what we were talking about at the very beginning of our video, where you and I had both talked about having different experiences with gray alien, or I was talking about my experiences with gray aliens, and then leading up to like 2009, my experiences working with Ashtar. And so these are all things that kind of I would maybe associate with the real Project Orion, or the White Brotherhood, or all of these different levels of alien, not don't want to use the word interference, but alien contact. Maybe my labs being more of like a negative contact, and the White Brotherhood being more of like a positive contact. But it kind of leads into that whole thing where, and also the Galactic Federation for that matter, and also the Galactic Federation, because all of these things they fit into all of this differently. You have different groups working with the government and different groups that are not working with the government, and they each have their own agenda. And obviously the one that I would work with, or the ones that I would work with, I'll put it that way. My ultimate goal and belief is teaching man to lead himself. That means that mankind becomes their own rulers, where we graduate from being the children of Earth to being, our own authorities. We will eventually not need a government to rule over us. And I think that has a lot to do with what the Galactic Federation promised, things like the Great White Brotherhood, mankind leading themselves and taking part in, the ultimate truth of disclosure. And I know that a lot of people in the world feel like we're not ready to have disclosure, we're not ready to be a part of that cosmic brotherhood, but some of us are, and some of us are being prepared for that. Especially people that are getting that alien contact, they're being prepared for that sort of work, working in exopolitics, working in hopefully leading mankind to lead themselves, working to mature the entire planet in that way, so that eventually we wouldn't need these government systems to manage us, because
Evolve human consciousness.
yes,
Collectively.
evolving human consciousness and, you know, evolving our mentality and our maturity to the point where we wouldn't need, you know, government to rule over us. We would be able to rule ourselves responsibly. And that would actually overthrow all of these government organizations as that happened.
Great. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, it's the only way that's going to happen. Like, everyone's got to evolute, or whatever we want to call it, enlighten themselves. Yeah, we've got to stop thinking. We've got to stop relying on these like people who are basically idiots, aren't they? Telling us what to do. Yeah, that's the only way. But
yeah, absolutely. And so that's why I feel like, you know, we have positive and negative alien contact. And I feel like the positive alien contact is getting us ready and maturing us. You know, like you said, a lot of this had to do with what they did to your brain and how it changed you, how these alien contacts changed you. And so, you know, here you are hosting this radio show, you're playing a
certainly,
part in the butterfly effect. So, you know, you're adding to the butterfly effect of, you know, helping to mature all of these people and, you know, talking about these things.
What's the butterfly effect?
I will tell you after. Okay. But it leads into the problem where the government wants to foster people needing the artificial womb of government. Now, that's something that Bill Cooper talked about, the artificial womb of government. That means that adults, or let's just say the human population, is conditioned to believe that they need the government to rule over them. They need the government to manage them. They're conditioned to believe that. They're conditioned to believe that they need police. They're conditioned to believe that they need government.
Or they're conditioned to believe that they're free and autonomous when really they're slaves.
And they're conditioned to believe that, you know, they need that artificial womb of government. And it fills this role as a parent for them, so that, you know, you have all of these adults who more or less have a childlike mentality because they have something else authoritative. They have this other authoritative factor, you know, over them to manage them. Well, eventually we would break out of that and we would be able to rule ourselves completely responsibly. And I think that has to do with, you know, joining the stars, joining these other races and becoming responsible cosmically.
yeah, definitely. I was going to say that. Yeah, the control system, they set themselves up as like surrogate parents, don't they? I mean,
exactly.
That's what they do. Because there's a very strong psychological technique, isn't it, to set yourself up as a parent? Because people naturally want to sort of obey the parent, don't they?
Yes, and especially when we're dealing with the destruction of family, we're dealing with high divorce rates. We're dealing with you know, people that come from broken homes. We're coming from the destruction of families that's been going on since maybe the 50s. And so with the destruction of family, you know, these people grow up coming from various types of broken homes, and then they're way more willing to accept that artificial womb of government that's being created.
You should listen to Edward Bernays' Propaganda. It's a book by Edward Bernays in 1951. Audiobook on YouTube, widely available in the public domain.
Yeah, well, like I say, I think I'm one of the good guys. I don't feel I'm doing anything negative. I'm trying to just tell people, not so much tell them what to do, but just to tell them of the reality of all this stuff. So, yeah, hopefully we've done this tonight.
Yes, and I think that, you know, as long as you have the best intentions, as long as your intentions are good, that's what you're putting out there. You know what I mean?
Hemi, where are you?
I'm here. I'm just listening. I'm letting you two guys get on with it.
Yeah.
I think we should.
Great to talk.
I think we should stick a pin in there. We'll probably we should get you back at some point if you want to come back and speak to us.
Oh, I would love to. I'm gonna have to go make dinner for my family anyway, and all of that. So
that's great.
I would absolutely love to. And I just wanted to say thank you guys for having me on. We got to talk about everything that I think was important to me. And
I really enjoyed it. Yeah. It's great to talk to someone who's into the same sort of things as me. Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
It is really, really difficult to find people that know all of this and can talk about it. So it definitely made my day to spend talking about all of this. I appreciate it. So I would definitely love to come back at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
And I thank you guys for the conversation.
No problem. If you wanna find Cassandra, go find her YouTube channel. Are you anywhere else? Did you say you got a couple of books out or something? Did you?
Yes. I'm on Amazon and Lulu. I'm on Amazon and Lulu under Casondra Starseed. So my books are on Amazon under Casondra Starseed, and my books are also on Lulu, which is a self-publishing website under Casondra Starseed. And then I have YouTube. Obviously, I'm Casondra Starfire on YouTube, and I have Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. My Twitter account is Soarer Cassandra. That's Soarer, like, from OTO. I'm a Soarer, a sister. Soarer Cassandra. And then I also have Instagram, Cassandra Starfire, and Facebook. I have my own page, which is Starfire Goddess Cassandra. And then I'm also Cassandra and Peto on Facebook as well. I have an eBay store to sell my orgone on eBay under Cassandra Starfire. And then I also have a Wish store. I sell orgone on Wish, the Wish application. I'm a private contractor on Wish, and I sell orgone on there. You just have to look up like keyword Cassandra Starseed or keyword orgone, and you'll find my stuff. But that's pretty much everywhere I am.
Lovely. Thanks for joining us,
Great, yeah.
Cassandra.
Yeah, thanks. That was
appreciate
great.
it.
Yeah, amazing.
Cheers.
I appreciate the conversation. Bye,
Thanks.
guys.
Right,
Night
see
all.
ya.